Greetings Age of Empires fans, I'm donHaize, and having recently completed Age of Empires the Definitive Edition on hardest difficulty, I thought it would be fun and interesting to put together a unit tier list for all of the units in the game. So I'm going to be ranking these from S tier, which are the goated units, all the way down to D tier, which are the weakest units, at least in my opinion. And I'm going to be ranking these units based on the resource cost, their strengths, their weaknesses, what mobility, attack, damage, health points, their usefulness in general. And I'm also going to be ranking from left to right. So units in the farthest left hand column will be the strongest units within each tier, and the units on the far right will be the weakest units within each tier. I haven't actually pre-done this. This is something I'm just doing literally on the fly. I'm very much winging it, some might say. But I thought we'd do this just for a bit of fun. Now we're going to have to start with probably one of the most goated units in the game. This is a tool age unit that just keeps getting better and better. It's your villager, your civilian, your builder, woodcutter, gold miner, farmer, builder, repairer, you name it. This little man does absolutely everything. There's no question in my mind that this is an S tier unit, because it is fundamental to Age of Empires. You almost cannot have any of these units without this unit. This unit enables resource collection, enables buildings to build these units from. I'm not going to go ahead and say it's the best unit in the game, because I definitely think there are better units out there in the game. Spoilers. But I do think that it is an S tier unit. I think it is a crucial and fundamental unit within the game. And for that reason, it is an S tier unit, and it is going at the top, at least for now. I am going to officially start with the Clubman. The Clubman is a very basic Stone Age unit. And I'm going to be doing it by the age, by the way, just so that we can... Because a lot of these units in this game are just upgraded versions of previous units. So there is naturally going to be like, oh, well, this unit's better than this one because it's available in higher age. So, yeah, starting with the Clubman, I think it is a good unit. It kind of serves its purpose as a early unit warrior. But that is exactly all it is. It's just a D tier unit. You know, it is what it is. It's the first fighting unit that you get in the game. Arguably, like 2 villagers can take down a Clubman, so they're not even that much better than villagers at fighting. Arguably, I feel like villagers actually attack faster, and sometimes feel like they do more damage, which is quite funny and comical. But yeah, the Clubman is what it is. It's the first unit you actually get in the game, and it's all right. It serves a purpose, but I would take a villager over a Clubman any day of the week. Next up, we've got the fishing boat. No combat capabilities, but it does its job well enough. It fishes fish. I'll be honest, if you've got shoreline fish, a villager is just as good at farming fish as a fishing boat. But you know, where it goes further ashore and downriver, that's when you need the fishing boat. It's a relatively cheap 75 cost wood. But yeah, I can't in good conscience put it any higher than a D, because it just does its job as well as it can. And then the trade boat is just about exactly the same. It's good to kind of boost your gold eco early on in the game. You basically send it to the enemy or enemy ally harbor dock or your own dock, and you basically get a gold income from it. Useful in the early game if you need to boost gold eco, but it's probably the weakest unit in the game in my opinion. I very rarely use them. They are fast, I'll give them that. Like they're nippy little ships, but they are what they are. Moving on to the Axeman. Axeman's basically just a better version of the Clubman, available in the second age, which is the Tool Age. Honestly, these guys are very, very marginally better than Clubman. They are better than Clubman, granted, but they're not that much better, to be honest. They're much of a muchness. They kind of serve a purpose, but they are very quickly made obsolete by gold units, or units that have a gold cost. Which then brings us on to the Slinger. The Slinger is slightly better than an Axeman in certain scenarios, but they're also they'll get absolutely slapped by an Axeman mano a mano. So arguably the Axeman's better in many ways. The Axeman can actually do damage to buildings, whereas the Slinger is hopeless at taking down buildings. But the Slinger can kite. They're a little bit more mobile. You can use them in numbers to take down archers. That's kind of, they're kind of more an anti-archer unit rather than an anti-melee unit character. So for that reason, they actually do take down archers or bowmen pretty well, which kind of makes them better than bowmen in the early game in many ways. That being said, they do lack the damage to take down or bring down a an Axeman or a Clubman. So yeah, they're marginally better than Axeman in my opinion, but they're also marginally worse in other aspects. Which brings us on to the bowmen. I don't think we can quite put them into a C tier, because they're not really that much better than a Slinger. In fact, a Slinger will beat a bowman one-on-one. So arguably Slingers are better than archers, but bowmen do have the benefit of being able to take down Axemen and Clubmen in numbers. So for that reason and that reason only, I'd say they are ever so slightly better than Slingers. And that brings us then to the final sort of melee unit of the Tool Age, and that is our Scout. The Scout is probably slightly better than a Slinger, slightly not as useful as an Archer or a Bowman. The reason why I'm putting it ahead of the Slinger is because they're very good at what they're very good at their job. They're very good at scouting the map. They're very good at harassing and hounding enemy villagers. They're very fast. They've got a decent health pool. And they can beat Slingers 1v1. In fact, they can kind of beat Bowmen Bowmen 1v1 as well in many ways. They're very cheap. They're just really solid units for the early game. But once you get a critical mass, once you get like 5 or 6 bowmen, kind of scouts become a little bit obsolete to a degree. But they can still be used to scout the map and harass your enemies. So yeah, I think they're a decent D tier unit, but that's as far as we can push them. Then we get into the realms of transport boats. Now, transport boats are very situational, but they're also very, very good at what they do. I think there's no way I can put them above a D tier, but in the same token, they're kind of better than everything else we've discussed in a sense that they might not be combat units, but what they can enable, the fact that they can enable victory conditions, they can enable you to move your army from one island to another to invade. They can enable you to take additional outposts on other islands. They're really useful units. You almost have to have at least one transport boat in an army, especially if there's any kind of water mass at all. Especially if you're on like an archipelago kind of map or an islands map. They're kind of like a needs must, whereas bowmen aren't needs must. They're kind of like, they're situational until you hit the Bronze Age, and then they're useless. So I think, yeah, I think the transport boat is just better. But the Scout is even better than that. I mean, the Scout is a really, really good early game unit. They kind of are a bit of a be-all for any island type, any missions where you need a dock. Scouts are really good. They're good at defending. They've got a decent range, so even if the enemy's invading you on your island, you can kind of use them on the shoreline and harass and hound the enemy. They do pretty much more damage than a bowman. They've got way more health than a bowman. They're pretty cheap at 135 wood a pop. Yeah, they're just really good units, and they can defend. They can harass the enemy fishing boats. They can defend you from transport boats, which can be game ending. Yeah, I really like Scouts. I think they deserve to be one of the best units in the D tier, quite frankly. So then we move into the big leap that is Bronze Age, Age 3 of 4. So there's quite a lot of units in Bronze Age. They're kind of like the enabler, and we're going to start with the short sword. The short sword is definitely C tier. They are easily better than all of the units we've already discussed so far. They are a little bit more expensive on the resource front, but they're actually pretty cheap overall. I think they're like 35 food and 15 gold. So, you know, there's the first of the gold requirements, but they are really cheap for what they are. And they pack a punch, one hell of a punch. It's a massive upgrade from the Axeman. They're actually not upgrades to Axeman, I should be clear. They are the first of their own tier of units. They kind of start the whole swordsman unit arc, or unit tier, I suppose. And they're solid. They are really, really good units. But very quickly replaced by the broadsword, which is just... it's just an upgraded version. They're a little bit stronger, a little bit tankier, more health, more damage, more armor. They're just a better version. But that being said, they're not that much better. So there's not a big gap, but it is sizable enough that you have to give them props for being just better units. And then we go on to the Hoplite. Now, the Hoplite is a very, very slow but powerful unit built from the Academy, which is another new building once you unlock the Bronze Age. They hit like a truck. Like, these things do 30 damage per hit, and they attack pretty quickly. Their big drawback is they are slow units. Like, they can be kited for days. But once you get in range of them, woof, these things are easily the best melee units of the era, for sure. Arguably, you could say the Horseman's up there on par, but they don't hit anywhere near as hard. They just have other advantages. So yeah, it's one of the best C tier units in my opinion. So then we move on to the improved Bowman. Now, this is a pretty decent unit. I'd have to say it's better than the short sword. Arguably, they're better than the broadsword, but I think the broadsword has more uses in the game than the improved Bowman. Like, the improved Bowman is good, but it's kind of a little bit one-dimensional with what it does. Like, it's good at taking down archers and other ranged units. They're kind of okay at dealing with low-end cavalry, but their real goal is to take down things like hoplites and short swords, I suppose. And they do their job pretty well, but I'd have to say broadswords just do a better job, and they absolutely massacre bowmen once they get in range. They're tanky enough that they can take a few shots, and they will catch up to bowmen. So yeah, I'd have to say they're a good C tier unit, but that's as far as they can go. Composite Bowman, however, which is technically the next upgrade to improved Bowman, they are definitely better than the Broadsword. Arguably better than the Hoplite as well. I think there's a discussion to be had as to whether they're better than Hoplites. Hoplites 1v1 will massacre a Composite Bowman, but Composite Bowmen are specifically designed to take down Hoplites. I think I would have to give a slight edge to the Composite Bowmen for the simple fact that they are very strong units. They do 5 damage, 45 health. Granted, that's only like a sixth of what the Hoplite does at 30 damage, but they are anti-Hoplite units. But the drawback of Composite Bowman is they're the first Bowman unit that has a gold cost attributed to them. So rather than costing, I think it's like 40 food and 20 wood, they cost 40 food and 20 gold, which makes them a little bit more of the expensive side. Still cheaper than a Hoplite, and they are very good. One of the other drawbacks is they can only be built by Eastern civilizations, so we're talking like your Byzantines, your Babylons, your Carthages of the world. Those types of Eastern kingdoms can build composite bowmen, whereas your Romans and other kind of more Western kingdoms cannot build them. So yeah, there's an argument there, I suppose. Then we move on to the camel archers. Camel archers are just better than the bowmen, the improved bowmen. Technically, they're kind of better than the composite bowmen in the sense that they're more mobile, but they do less damage. They have a bigger hit point pool, but I find composite bowmen just hit harder. And hoplites are just, you know, a hoplite gets on top of these things and 3 hits and they're dead. But there's an argument to be said that they'll never catch a cavalry archer that's being microed. So it's another one of them. But I will say the cavalry archer, as good as they are, they're kind of, I don't know, they kind of don't have a huge impact in the game. Whereas hoplites absolutely can dominate in that bronze era. Same as composite bowmen, they can absolutely dominate that kind of... If you get enough of them, they can absolutely just crush an army. Whereas chariot archers don't really do that. So on to their kind of counterpart, the charioteers, or chariots. I'd say they're not quite as... I think I'd rather have a couple of chariot archers in my army than I would a couple of chariots. But in the same token, chariots are pretty decent. Again, they're fast. They've got a decent health pool. Their damage is probably a little bit lacking, which is why I don't think I can put them any higher than they are. But they don't cost gold. They only cost wood and food, which kind of gives them a bit of an advantage in a way, because gold is like that finite resource, that limiting resource in Age of Empires, where there's only so much of it on any given map. So you need to kind of have a couple of units that are not gold hungry, and chariots kind of fit that bill. They can pad out an army quite well, and they do a decent job as well. I think that's kind of where they sit. We may jiggle these things around as I kind of have more time to think about them, but I think that's pretty much where they sit at the moment, in my mind. Camel Riders. Now these are very interesting units. I would say they definitely sit above the chariot units. I still think the hoplite just carries more weight. I think they're just better units overall. But the Camel Riders are, I think, the fastest unit in the game. So they have mobility on their side. They're also really, really adept at taking down archers and villagers. They're really great harassment units. But I think they lack some of the firepower to deal with like your broadswords and your hoplites of the world. They're not very tanky. They've got a decent health pool actually, but they don't have the power to take down buildings very well. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think that's pretty much where they sit. And then we've got the cavalry. Man, cavalry are so good in this game. 80 food, 50 gold. They're designed to take down melee units such as broadswords, short swords. But they basically take out everything. Probably as far as hoplites. Hoplites would win 1v1. But they're so good at harassing. They're tanky, they're healthy, they're mobile. Yeah, I've got a lot of time for cavalry. I think they are really, really strong units. I think they're the best of the C tier units available. Yeah, there's a question mark as to whether they should be like a low-end B tier unit or whether they should be like a high-end C tier unit. Either way, I'm going to keep them where they are for now, but it's a potential swap around later on. Let's see how it pads out. But man, cavalry are so good. Probably one of the best units in the Bronze Age. Genuinely, definitely up there. So then we've got fishing ships, which are they're just way better than fishing boats on every possible metric. They're faster, gather fish faster. They're just really good units. But they kind of suffer from the same thing, that they're kind of like one-dimensional. Like, that's all they do. They no combat capabilities. They have their uses, but you know, you don't really need them. Merchant vessels or merchant ships. Basically an upgraded version of the trade boat. Slightly better than the trade boat, faster, a little bit more health. But again, they serve the same purpose, so yeah, they're D tiers. War galleys. War galleys, war galleys, war galleys. What a unit. These things are genuinely good. I'd have to say they're probably better than the cavalry in some ways. Maybe not as good as cavalry in others, but the thing that makes the war galley so good is it can hold their own against triems. Scouts get absolutely massacred by war galleys. Triems absolutely massacre scouts. But triems are only... Even though, like, on paper they're so much better, realistically they're not actually that much better than a war galley. The war galley's just... It's such a good unit. It can be used to take down enemy buildings. It can be used to take down enemy units as well. So even, like, you get a couple of these on, like, a coast, and you can absolutely hammer down cavalry, archers, hoplites, cavalry, you know, camel archers. All these, yeah, all the units pretty much before them, they can pretty much take out with ease. They're just so versatile, and I think the versatility is what makes these units so good. They're really mobile, very damaging. They do like 8 damage a shot, which kind of puts the composite bowman to shame, who just does 5. They have like triple the health of a composite bowman. They're faster than a bowman. Yeah, they're just so good. Again, another one of these could be a low-end B tier, probably a high-end C tier. Stone thrower, the last of the oh no, that's priest as well. So the second from last Bronze Age unit. Where would this sit? It's very situational. Very situational, kind of one-dimensional, friendly fires your own troops. Slow as hell. But good at taking down buildings. Decent range. Yeah, do they have more impact than a short sword? Maybe? Situationally, yes. Do they have more impact than a bowman? Again, situationally, I suppose. You know what? I'm going to be fair. It does do a decent job at taking down buildings. Got a decent range. It loses points though because it's expensive, and it loses points because it friendly fires. But can attack ground, can take down priests and things. Yeah. You know what? I think that's a fair rating for that unit. Oh, the priest. Oh, the priest. My least favourite unit in this game. The most annoying unit to deal with in the Age of series. Is this an A tier unit? I think it is. You can upgrade it so that it dies and instantly converts any unit in the game. So instantly dies, instantly converts any unit in the game. Including villagers, including the goated units. Oh man, he could be an S tier. With upgrades. Can convert buildings. Hella annoying to deal with. Can literally put an entire army out of position to deal with them. Oh man, I'm a little bit torn. I'm going to have to think a little bit harder on these priests because I despise them more than any other unit in this game. I despise going up against them. They are a little bit expensive on the 100 gold per unit, but what they can do, well, they can heal as well. They can heal your units. Man, these things are so good. Yeah, I'm gonna keep them at S tier for now. That one's subject to move, but they're up there. They're either A or S right now. And they're definitely ASS to deal with, that's for sure. Right. Long swords, the upgrade of the broadsword. Ooh, these things, guys, are good. And they're cheap. Maintaining that 35 food but 15 gold cost. You can bang these things out so quickly. So quickly. And they're versatile, they're fast, they're good, like they've got decent mobility. They're very good at dealing with pretty much any unit before them. They're a good B tier unit. They really are. Yeah, I'm a massive fan of longswords. This name always escapes me. It's a bit of a funny name. I would tend to call them phalanx, but it's not. It's a phalangite is its official name. Essentially a phalanx, upgraded version of the hoplite. Man, these things are armored to the teeth. They hit like an absolute garbage truck. Like, these things are insane. But they suffer from the lack of mobility. But they'll just... anything that comes in their range, man, dead. Next unit, dead. Next unit, next volley, dead. It's like, oof. Damn. Damn, they're good. Now we get into the real kind of heavy hitting units. So worth noting these two both Iron Age units. Yeah, okay, so heavy cavalry. Kind of do everything a cavalry does, but better. Their job is to take care of longswords. But they're so much more than that. They're amazing at harassing. They've got really good damage. They're tanky. Massive health pools. They wouldn't win against a Phalangite. But they would absolutely smash basically anything else in a 1v1 below them, basically. But it's the mobility, it's the versatility that makes this unit so good. Similar to the cavalry, why the cavalry was better than the hoplite. It's the same thing here with the heavy cavalry. Like, mobility is such a powerful, borderline underrated mechanic or feature of the game. And being able just to run, like, you don't have to fight them, you can just run away from them. And then you can start harassing things, and the Phalangites will never catch up to you unless you manage to corner them or pincer them some way, trap them. Yeah, man, heavy cavalry is just really good units. Massive fan of them. Elephants, war elephants. Oh my Christ, these things are broken. They're really good kind of broken units because they've got so much health. Like, I could be going a little bit awry with the numbers. I'm kind of guessing based on memory, but heavy cavalry have somewhere in the region of about 150 health points. War elephants, I think it's somewhere in the region of 750 health points. They're not even that crazy expensive. In fact, they only cost 40 gold and like 180 food. Which actually makes them cheaper, technically, from a gold perspective. Because, again, food's a very easy resource to get with farms. Gold is the finite resource that you need to be used sparingly. And these things have less gold count than these, but they've got like 5 times the health pool. They hit like a truck. What's different is their AoE damage. So any unit in front of them takes damage. Splash damage, if you will. They are slow, I'll give them that. That's their weakness. And I would argue that Phalangites and the Phalanxy Centurion type units, they do counter war elephants. That is their job, to counter these types of units. But man, I can't put them any less than A. I mean, there's an argument that they're S tier. I don't think they can be because there are better units than them. But damn, they're good. And then you've got the elephant archers. I'd have to go ahead and say elephant archers are the best ranged unit in the game. Maybe they're not the best ranged unit. They're up there because they've got that similar kind of health pool that's crazy. They hit like a, for as far as ranged units go, they hit like a truck. And they're one of the few units that can actually take, one of the few ranged units, one of the only ranged units that can deal with a heavy catapult. They've got so many merits. They can deal with sieges, so they can deal with like Heliopolis. They can deal with legionnaires. Man, they can deal with S tier units, which is scary. Again, they lack mobility. But these are, and the other challenge is they're very limiting in terms of what factions can build them. I think they're limited pretty much to a very finite number of Eastern kingdoms. Carthage is definitely one of them. I'm pretty sure Persia can build them as well. And that's pretty much the only factions that can build them. But the factions that can build them, man, they are elevated by the availability of these two troops. So then we move on to the Horse Archer. Now the Horse Archer is definitely an A tier unit, because it can run circle pretty much around all of these units. Arguably heavy cavalry. Ah man, it's a difficult one because heavy cavalry do technically counter them. But Horse Archers are one of the few units that counter War Elephants. Not Elephant Archers, but War Elephants. They are technically the counter to, because War Elephants can't catch up with them. Now they're not as broken as to fire on the move, but you can fire, you can move, fire, and the only real unit that can catch up with them is the Camel Rider and the cavalry units, like the heavy cavalry. Chariot Archers and Chariots don't stand a chance because they get absolutely slapped before they even get close. The only reason heavy cavalry can kind of put up a fight against them is because they're armored, and they can take a few punches from these guys. And whilst they're kind of turning to fire, that's when they catch up and slap them. But here's the thing with cavalry archers is they are really, once you get the flaming arrows upgrade, they can pretty much take down buildings with ease. They outrange sentry towers. Man, they're so good. And they can actually, they can technically run circles around catapults as well, making them a very, very strong unit. Yeah, I'd have to say they're very, very, very strong units. I'm a massive fan of cavalry archers. They are a little bit expensive on the gold front. I think they're 80 food and 60 gold, but well worth the investment. And once you get a critical mass, even these things don't stand a chance, because one volley just takes them out. Once you get like 12, 13, 14, something in that region. Boats can't deal with them. Yeah, they're really good. Really, really good units. So then we move on to the Ballista. Now the Ballista... The Ballista's incredible. It really is a strong unit. But it's also quite weak, quite slow, doesn't have a high health pool. They technically counter heavy cavalry, because their damage just overpowers and overwhelms the armor. But you get a couple of cavalry that come from different angles, and they'll massacre Ballista. This is a situational one, because you could also argue they're technically better than heavy horse archers of heavy cavalry. There's an argument to be said they're even better than cavalry archers. Even technically better. They do technically counter war elephants to a degree once you hit a critical mass. But they are quite expensive. I think it's like 100 wood, 80 gold. They're not cheap. Very slow to build. But I do rate them. I do rate them very highly. You might have to come back to the Ballista. Great unit though. Catapult. I think the catapult's got to be a good B tier unit. It massively outperforms against the stone thrower. Still has friendly fire issues. There's an argument to be said that catapults technically counter ballista, but ballista are counters to infantry. And boy, are they counters to infantry. They're really good at taking down buildings. I would take an army of ballistas over an army of catapults any day of the week. Because ballistas don't friendly fire, catapults do. They're very micro intensive at catapults. Ballistas are very straightforward. You can pretty much A-move once you hit a critical mass and take down basically anything the enemy throws at you. The exceptions being probably horse archers. And depending on if you can get surround heavy cavalry. So yeah, that's where I'm placing them. Heavy transports. Man, these things are tanky. They've got more impact than these units. Way more impact than these units. But also they have no fighting capability. It's got to be taken into account. I think this is a pretty fair, like they are a massive improvement on the transport boat. Capacity goes, I think, from 5 to 10. So you double up. Same cost. Faster, tankier, heavier. More health. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that placement. I think that's fair. Fire triremes. Oh man, only a few civilizations can even build these, but once you get on top of ships, these things are absolutely outrageous in the DPS that they do. But they're melee units, technically, like melee ships. So once you get a critical mass of triremes, they can take care of these with ease. I will say war galleys don't stand a chance. They have to be categorically better than them. They're a little bit too specialist is the problem. But what they do very well, and that is sink ships. And you get a couple of these things that can stay on top of it. They do splash damage as well. So, yeah, if you get like 5 of these, and you jump on like 20 triremes and can get in range. Woo, bye-bye triremes. And speaking of triremes, triremes, the problem is triremes are, whilst they're not better than fire galleys, technically, certainly not 1v1, they have a bigger impact. I'd also go as far as say that they have more impact than a catapult. Not as much as no, I think these guys are well suited as a very high beta unit, but I'm a massive fan of triremes. I think they're really good, very strong. They're just straight up better than war galleys in every metric. Even though war galleys can put up a decent fight against them. And then you've got catapult triremes. I mean, catapult triremes are better than catapults. Like, it's not even up for debate, in my opinion. Catapult triremes are so much more impactful. The fact that they're on the sea, they can take down pretty much any seafaring unit. In fact, they are the natural kind of counter to fire galleys, unless they're literally on top of them. Man, they can absolutely decimate a kingdom from the sea. A massive range. They still have the friendly fire problem, but it's not as challenging on the sea. It's more of a land army problem than a sea army problem. And then you've got the Juggernaut, which is basically the first of the top echelon of units, I should say. They're just a better version. Very, very expensive upgrade. But they are really, really powerful units. Really, really powerful. Man, there's arguments to be said they're kind of further up this list, but they're not that. There's not that much difference. I think it's like +1 range plus a bit of extra health. I think the damage is basically the same, maybe like a small bonus to damage. I can't justify them putting any much higher than these guys, really. Heliopolis, however, man, these units are insane. These units are insane. They got the same challenges that the Ballista has. It's a very expensive upgrade. And to be clear, they only actually get +1 range, +5 damage, and a little bit of extra health. So, in terms of stats, they don't seem that much better on paper. In practice, oh my god, the difference is insane. They smack these things before they even get range. They smack these things before they even get in range once you get a critical mass. These things don't stand a chance. Oof. They are solid units. Really, really good units. Heavy catapult. These are interesting units and difficult to place. They are definitely better than the catapult. A lot tanky. They got a decent health pool. Really strong range. Probably one of the strongest ranges in the game. They're very expensive upgrade. Suffer from friendly fire, and the problem is the friendly fire is almost worse because the fact that they do more damage. Like, situationally, they do their job extraordinarily well. But it's a difficult one. You could argue that they're up there maybe slightly better than these guys, the ships. I definitely rate a Juggernaut over the Heavy Catapult. Would I rate... I think I'd kind of have to, in a way. Because they do outrange, they do outdamage. I think that's a fair... They do also... They are the hard counter to Heliopolis and Ballistas as well. So I think it's got to get some bonus points for that, because there's not many units that counter this unit, the Heliopolis. This unit does. Arguably this unit does. This unit does. That's probably about it that counters that one unit. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's a fair listing for that, or a fair ranking. Legionnaires, the top of the food chain as far as swordsmen go. So they're still costing 35 food and 15 gold. These things, stat-wise, they're not a huge difference. They're not like a huge bonus to the longsword. But here's what's amazing with Legionnaires. They're 35 food, 15 gold. Very, very quick to create. You can get an army of these in no time. And once you get a critical mass of these Legionnaires, there's not a huge amount that counters them. Heliopolis do, so I have to say Heliopolis are better categorically. War elephants counter them. Elephant archers in numbers kind of do as well because they're just so tanky. And you can argue that the horse archers also kind of counter them. But again, it's kind of like the horse archer is the problem is the horse archer is a very versatile unit, right? But the Legionnaires can just do so much. They're an all-rounder unit, and they are the best all-rounder unit. There's no unit like it. It's got good mobility, good damage, good armor, good health. What am I missing? Like it doesn't really have any weaknesses. It's just other units are a little bit more specialist and probably are better countered than them. Yeah, they're definitely strong units. And then you get to the Centurion, which is the equivalent upgrade to the what are they called? Phalangites. Or phalanxes, if you prefer. But yeah, the Centurion's just it's the heaviest hitting unit in the game in terms of just damage, really. Aside from heavy catapults, juggernauts, and potentially Heliopolis, these things hit like an absolute truck. They hit like an articulated lorry, is what they do. But they suffer from this mobility. That's their only weakness, really, is they're a little bit slow. So countered by things like horse archers again. Heliopolis counter them. Elephant archers kind of counter them. But man, they are good units. They are really, really, really strong units. Yeah, I think that's a fair. They're also the counter to war elephants, but war elephants, are they better? Maybe they're not actually. Maybe they do go up one, because they are technically the counter to war elephants. I'm kind of thinking that's fair. Kind of thinking that's fair. You know, the more I look at this, the more I'm thinking these two units, man, they are goated units. There's not a lot that beats them. En masse. They kind of counter each other in a way. It's kind of funny. Alright, the scythe. I think this is meant to be the scythe chariot. I think the image is wrong, but whatever. We'll assume this is the scythe chariot, folks. The highest upgrade of the chariot. Now, there's a couple of little things that make this unit really good. One is they have triple strength at resisting conversions. And it is worth noting how conversions work. Conversions basically are priests versus resistance. If it can take 1 or 2 chance to convert an enemy, to convert a unit. Or it can take 25 chance. It's kind of like a roll the dice, and every chance you roll the dice. If you hit a 5 or a 6, you get the conversion. If you hit 1, 2, 3 or 4, you don't. It's kind of like the roll the dice with the Caprice, right? Having the triple resistance means you can only roll a 6. You can only hit a d20. You know, only a d20, a natural 20 will get you a conversion. So these things are really, really useful in that regard. If you're going to load an enemy with loads of priests, this is the counter. The other benefit, they don't cost gold. They cost wood and food. 60 food, 40 wood, I believe. But they lack a lot of... They're good generalist units, but they lack a lot of oomph. They don't have a massive health pool, although it is decent. I think they lack damage more than anything. Their speed's pretty decent. Oh, where do these sit? Where do these sit? That's a... I kind of think they're sat around here somewhere. Maybe they sit here. Between the longsword and the phalanx. I'm just going to call it a phalanx from now. Every time I mention a phalanx, I actually mean a phalangite. But remembering that name every time is worth. Because I rate heavy cavalry over scythe chariots in many ways. Definitely rate a ballista over a scythe chariot. Definitely rate a phalanx over a scythe. But they are technically better than longswords. They have some really good utility. They don't cost gold. Yeah, I think that's a fair rate ranking for that based on that criteria. Okay. The 3 big units. Cataphracts. Now in Age of Empires 2, I think Cataphracts are one of the best units in the game, period. In Age of Empires 1, however, they're only one of the best units. But man, can I really call them anything other than S? They kind of beat everything except for Heliopolis. They kind of beat elephant archers. They kind of beat war elephants. They kind of don't beat centurions. Do I have to put them here? Is that where he's got to put them? Is that where we've got to put them? Yeah, they're just Centurions are better in terms of they'll just deal with Centurions are kind of the counter. Heliopolis are kind of the counter. Horse archers kind of aren't the counter to these. Kind of both as good as each other, but the thing is these things are much better at dealing with buildings. They're much better at dealing with mobility side of things. Yeah, that kind of is where they sit. Armored War Elephant. Wow, this is a unit. This... This unit is actually ridiculous. But it does still get countered by the Heliopoly. This is a hard tier list, actually. It's quite expensive. The upgrade's really expensive. But Heliopolis counter them. Horse archers really don't. Maybe I'm gonna have to... Heliopolis really are just... Yes, they're countered by like 2 units in the game. The elephant archer and the heavy catapult. Technically the juggernaut as well. In numbers, that is the only units that counter the Heliopoly. Arguably, Centurions are kind of an answer. But also they kind of counter them as well, so it's kind of like... They are better than Cataphracts in many ways. Again, it's that health pool, like 200 hitch health to 750. And their armor's outrageous. And then that brings us on to the final unit. The goated heavy archer. Heavy cavalry archer. Man, these units are insane. They kind of counter everything. Arguably Cataphracts are an answer. And so are elephant archers. Elephant archers, you know what? These things are... actually kind of insane. The more I think about what the elephant archer is capable of, because they are technically the counter to the heavy cavalry. Heliopolis and heavy cavalry archers, these things have got longer range, so they can kind of deal with heavy cavalry archers. These things just smack. Like, Heliopolis are the counter to heavy war elephants. Once you get like 6 or 7 of them, bye-bye. 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 Bye-bye, bye-bye. Yeah, you get the idea. They just take care of anything. The build is just too pivotal to, like... They're central to the game. They enable everything else on here. The priests. Man, the priest is annoying. And once you get them upgraded, instantly convert any other unit. It's hard to argue with that. Even though they're kind of countered by a lot of these units, resistance is such a funny thing because it can be like 1 chant captured or 5 chants before it's captured, in which case that would absolutely slap a priest. Yeah, these two kind of counter these guys. The heavy horse archer is insane. The heavy armored war elephant is woof. Just absolutely decimates everything else below it. The Centurion is just really a top tier unit. Kind of counters everything, except for maybe horse archers. Technically ballistic can deal with them. Cataphracts kind of deal with everything below it. War elephants are probably the exception to the rule. But the mobility that these things can bring. They can take down... I mean, they're... Man, they could just take down so much. And I'm trying to be fair in the fact that I'm trying to think of all of the options in terms... It's not just what wins versus this unit. It's kind of like the whole... What they bring to the table. These things bring mobility, harassment, damage, health. They're just a really good all-round unit. And they can deal with pretty much everything below them. Except maybe these guys. Legions are insane. Yeah, I think this is a pretty good representation of what I personally think are the best units in Age of Empires 1 DE. I think this is about as fair as I can make it. But I'd love to hear what you guys think. If you think I've ranked things poorly or well. What units you guys like, what units you dislike. For me, I massively dislike priests. I love these Heliopolis and elephant archers. But yeah, do you know what? That'll right about do it for this video, folks. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up. If this is the kind of content you enjoy, then please do consider subscribing to the channel. It does help support the channel, be greatly appreciated. Do let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always, I shall see you in the next video.